As many of you know, my beautiful state of North Carolina was hit by Hurricane Helene, and the city I live in, Asheville, as well as countless other surrounding cities, were decimated by it. It has been a total of 48 days since writing the script and recording it that the majority of us are still without potable water. It will be a very long time before Asheville will be able to fully pull itself together after this large-scale natural catastrophic event. And that's not even thinking about the outlying cities that are either wiped off the face of this planet or near impossible to get to without a helicopter. If you are listening to this and want to help, there are two great local organizations you can send donations to. Beloved Asheville at belovedasheville.com and the Asheville Poverty Initiative at ashevillepovertyinitiative.org. You can also find both on Facebook if you look up their individual pages. I will also have links to their web pages in the description below. If you visit Beloved Asheville's Facebook page, they also have a flyer posted with items they either need donated or what they are trying to get via funds. Also, if you're unsure of what to send and want to send something and you can't afford things like chainsaws, money is always a great thing to send. There are still plenty of people without homes or jobs or both that could really use the money right now. Anyways, thank you and enjoy the show. Hello, and welcome back to our second episode in the Silent Hill 2 Remake series. I'm your host, Brandon, and today we will be talking about Brookhaven Hospital and all the events that lead up to it. First off, though, I want to apologize. I am sorry if this episode is getting to you all very late. About the Brookhaven area, the HDMI port on my PS5 gave out completely, and I had to replace it. Now, I bought my PS5 originally second-hand, and so instead of submitting it for repairs, which, the warranty was gone, so it would have been really expensive, and it would have taken weeks to get back to me, I just opted to get a new one on credit, which would arrive in a week. So, yeah, it took me a little bit to get this, to be able to finish this episode. Also, I thought for sure this episode would include Toluca Prison, but it actually took me something like 3.5 to 4 hours to complete Brookhaven Hospital. A lot of reviewers said they didn't really have a hard time with the puzzles in this game, but I definitely was stumped on Brookhaven, and I suspect that might be why it took me so long to get through it. Either way, that's where we are stopping at if you are just tuning in. We will be stopping at the end of Brookhaven Hospital. Also, if you have any comments or questions, please feel free to message me at thenerdarchivist@gmail.com. Links in the description below. Now, let's continue our journey through Silent Hill. So last we left off, we had just met Maria, and she manipulated us into letting her show us this special spot where young lovers go, and you leave Rosewater Park. Now upon leaving Rosewater Park, she urges you to cut through Jack's Inn. However, there is a parking lot across the street that you should investigate should you want to venture off the beaten path. And boy, oh boy, do you go off the beaten path. If you decide to go check out the parking lot, you find out that it's an auto shop. And around the auto shop, there is a car jack under a sliding door with a missing lever. Now, if you go all the way down the road in the direction of the Historical Society building, you will come across a gas station. And if you decide to explore the gas station, you will find the lever. Now, the minute you get the lever, monsters will start appearing, so be ready for that. Honestly, I fought like 2 of them and just ran from the rest. I mean, who got time for all that nonsense? We got a dead wife to find. If you take the lever back to the auto shop, you can get in for some nice health items and more handgun bullets, I believe. Now heading back to Jack's Inn, we'll have you solve another safe puzzle. But before the safe, I want to talk about the saves for a minute. As you undoubtedly know, you save your game through a blood red square. In the save menu, as you save your game, you can see James's questioning face staring back at you, which is actually him staring into the square. So the first time you save very early on in the game, it's at a red square in the well. When you access the save, James says he can feel something probing around in his head. And then it goes to the save menu. Now, when you access the save menu at Jack's Inn, while Maria's with you, she'll start talking to you while you are in the save menu. She'll say, "James, is everything all right?" When you get out of the save menu, she continued the conversation. "Hey, are you okay? It's like you froze for a second." You give a response like you literally just came out of a trance and say, "Yeah, it's fine." I find this interaction neat as it shows that you are the only one that can see the red square and that it is intrinsically a part of your psyche. Also, every time you save, you are literally going into a trance and staring blankly at whatever direction the red square is at. I think that's pretty neat. Now the safe. So, you have to figure out a code, and there's a memo about room 107. So there's another room of interest too, 106. I think the secret to this room is a little later in the game, but if you enter it, James will remark that the room feels off and that they shouldn't be there. Maria will say to chill out, but James is very certain about it. Outside of that, though, I don't know anything about it other than I think we will get a clue to it later. I've been trying really hard to not ruin any of the secrets in this game, as I want it all to be an experience with a fresh mind. Well, everything but the story. It's a 20-year-old game. The plot has been plenty spoiled by many video essayists for a long time now. So, when you get to the room 107, Maria will find an outfit hanging in the closet of room 108, and wouldn't you know, it's the OG outfit Maria wore in the first Silent Hill 2 game. She flirtingly prods James more, asking if he thought she would look good in it, and James just tries to push it away and says, yeah, sure." She sulks a little and responds, "Not the shining endorsement I was looking for, but hey, I'll take it." Interestingly enough, too, when you access the safe with the code and get the fence key, a scripted attack will happen in which a mannequin will bust out of the storage room and attack Maria. 1 or 2 bullets will put it out, but Maria will respond that she is thankful that James is there, and James will agree with it. Now, outside the fence, there is a big house you go to, but Maria will stay outside the gate. When you leave, there is a dialogue option with Maria in which she'll say that she has a bad feeling about this place and that she doesn't want to go there. When asked if she had been there before, she'll say that she can't remember. If you look at the map, the building will be labeled as the Baldwin Mansion. Now, dear listeners, I did a little digging to see what the importance of this house was, or if it would come up later in the game, and it turns out that the house is from the OG Silent Hill 2 DLC game, Born from a Wish. The Baldwin Mansion is where Maria starts her campaign. I thought this touch was pretty neat. As you move forward towards the location that Maria wants to take you to, she asks James what he will say to Maria since it's been 3 years. James says he'll tell her he loves her, and Maria replies, "Looky her." James is taken back by this comment and asks what she means by it, and she says she didn't mean anything by it. It's just been 3 years. 3 years is a long time. It sounds a lot like she's quietly trying to sow the seeds of doubt in him. Remember earlier in the game when James gets the Woodside apartment keys and the fog gets denser and the wind blows harder and you get bombarded by even more monsters? Well, hold on to your butts, kids, because it's happening again. After walking down the street, a little bit, a bunch of lying figures will start coming out of the literal woodworks, and James and Maria will escape through a fence. This segment will give you a bunch of lying figures and a steel pipe, which will take the place of the wooden plank melee weapon. Now, during this windy, foggy segment, you can fight all of them if you want. They aren't hard really, but you really don't need to, much like getting to Woodside Apartments. If you just run from them, that will be a lot quicker. There are, however, 3 mannequins in this segment hiding towards the end, so be careful. Getting through this area will get you to the infamous Heaven's Night. So yeah, Heaven's Night is a strip club. When Maria leads you into the strip club, she runs off quickly and leaves you hanging. When James comes to the club proper, she hits the lights and steps out onto the pole and gives him a super flirtatious look. She follows this with a, "What? I was just kidding," phrase. She says that a lot when she pushes boundaries. James is a little frustrated by this, asking, "What is this?" And, "Is this a special place you were meaning?" Once again, she tries to lure him away from his goal, saying that they just need to go through and out the front door. But since they were here, why not take a break? Just for a little while. Take a minute and catch our breaths. You know, in the strip club. When James refuses, saying he doesn't have time to take a break and that Maria could be out there waiting for him, she changes her tone from flirtatious to feigned regret and sadness, saying this place was just a nightmare and that it was just getting to her and she just needed to get away, even just for a little bit, in a strip club. Ladies, if another woman is taking your man to a strip club on the way to saving you, she's not trying to help him save you. James, feeling bad and falling for the ruse entirely, backtracks and apologizes. It's also interesting to note the Heaven's Night music intensifies after this a little, as if to note Maria's resurgence as she succeeds in getting him to take a break. It's also interesting to note that after he sits down and resides himself to the break, the music dies back down from intense to mellow, although the music still has a sense of urgency to it, going against the idea of a break, as if in the background the track is quietly urging James to keep pushing forward. It's also interesting to note that Maria pours them both a drink, but James does not drink it. There's a close-up of his hands as she takes her drink, and his fists are clenched, just a little, as if it's taking all of his power to resist drinking the drink. So I've heard a few die-hard Silent Hill fans hypothesize that it's never explicitly said that James was probably an alcoholic, but that it was implied. I think the scene is very well animated. After the scene is over, you can explore the nightclub if you want to before leaving, and if you do, you will find neat little clues to the next big area dungeon in the game, a nurse's outfit. When James leaves the club, Maria will say they can always come back again and take a break, and James shoots down that idea, saying he didn't think that was a good idea. In the club, we are not all fam. Leaving Heaven's Night will then take you to the place that Maria was intending to bring James, Moonlight Grove. So when you get to Moonlight Grove, Maria leads you to her. Only the her she is talking about isn't Maria, it's a statue of a maiden from local legend. She begins to tell him the story of the Moonlight Grove maiden. The story goes that a woman gets cast out of Silent Hill to a tiny island in Toluca Lake, and a man goes out every night to take care of her, and she lights his way with a candle. But one night a storm hits and the candle blows out. Despite trying to find her, the storm and the water take him and he never gets to her. Regardless, legend says she still lights the candle every night waiting for him. This story is important to the story in general, and we will more than likely talk about it in the next episode when we discuss the Historical Society. Now, James has the most exasperated and exhausted look on his face. He had really hoped that Maria was going to lead him to a place where he would find Maria or a clue to where Maria was, and it was very evident that that was not the case. Now, as they sit on a park bench next to the maiden, they hear the scream of a young girl. This point is interesting because not only is James worried about the scream, but so is Maria. Maria has had an unbreakable focus on James until the scream. As they both stand up, she has a very worried look on her face. Following the scream will take you to the movie theater, which is a new area created for the remake. The scene that is coming originally was in the bowling alley, but they changed it for whatever reason to a theater. But the bowling alley still does exist, and you can still find it on the map. You can also, I think, go to it, but we'll talk about that again in the next episode. So this is the point where I started to realize that Silent Hill 2 reminded me a whole lot of Alan Wake 2. Both Alan Wake 2 and Silent Hill 2 involve a surreal-like dream environment that brings out the protagonist's worst fears. And both games involve a sleepy little tourist town in both the greater northeast and the greater northwest. And, as it sees fit to be, both games have a theater level. And both games will have you running through the entirety of the theater as well. So when you enter the theater, Maria will say she's going to stay behind because she's not a movie fan. I thought this was just a campy humor insert until I was watching the original bowling alley scene, sorry, I can't talk right now, in which Maria says something similar. She says, "I'll wait out here. I hate bowling." It's still pretty campy, but it's a fun little nod to the OG scene. Also, upon entering, you can hear familiar voices talking, and if you look into a peephole, you'll see that it's Eddie and Laura. Oh, also, Laura will call Eddie a gutless fatso, which tracks for the original scene, albeit for different reasons. Much like the other scenes, this one maintains the heart of the original, but changes a lot of the dialogue cues to fit the new area and actions. In the original, Laura just asks what Eddie did, to which he replies, "Nothing serious." The gutless fatso comment comes out, and she runs off when James shows up. In the new scene for the remake, Laura foreshadows things in her remarks, like when she calls Eddie weird. She then says people call her weird, and that also people yell at her, especially when she does something bad. Yep, this absolutely in no way will come back later in the next area. Not even the slightest. Also, they cut out the part where Eddie asks about the lady she is looking for, a lady by the name of Mary. I'm guessing, though, that would be way too on the nose with the storytelling, and they also bring that up later too, and I'm guessing Bluebird just wanted to leave the mystery up a little longer. So another interesting change in this scene, outside of the obvious switch from Pete's Bolorama to the theater, is James's interaction with Eddie. Eddie is no longer eating a pizza, but he is sitting in the front row eating the most unrealistically big tub of strawberry ice cream with his hands. And yes, you heard me right. He is scooping that shit out and eating it with his hands. Blech. Super gross. In this newly imagined scene, Eddie sounds like he is in a trance, staring blankly at an empty movie screen while eating the ice cream with his fucking hands. When James talks to him, he sounds distracted and uninterested, as if whatever he is seeing is way more captivating than whatever James is talking about. Also, and I didn't realize this until now, but James just now learned Laura's name, and only because Eddie blurted it out. The only time Eddie changes his tone for even a minute is when James asks him if he's going to help him find Laura, to which Eddie stops what he is doing and looks at him with a very annoyed stare and exclaims, "Now you want me to go with you?" Also, there is a point while they are conversing in which Eddie almost seems to come out of his trance. Notice he's been eating ice cream with his hands, and then wipes his hands on his shirt. This only lasts a moment, though, as he goes right back to eating with his hands again. Also, Eddie is very nonchalant about a young girl running around with monsters all over. Running throughout the theater and film storage area will lead you to the front, where you see Laura running out and away. When you leave, Maria will meet up with you, saying she saw where Laura is going. As you run in that general direction, you see Laura run into Brookhaven Hospital. So Brookhaven is where I felt like the puzzles started to get a little obtuse for me. As I said before, this area took me a little bit, mostly because I was running around and trying to figure out the new puzzles. Brookhaven is bigger than Woodside, and, unlike Woodside, you can't really figure it out if you just keep going in a general direction. You have to explore all the rooms and you have to explore all the floors to the fullest. The puzzles in Brookhaven really did have me running all over trying to find whatever clue or missing puzzle item I needed to move forward. A good example of this is the lock combo you have to figure out for a room on the 3rd floor. The only clue you get for it are the directions drawn above the lock for the order in which you turned the dial in. That's it. And where was the combo located? Well, it definitely wasn't in a memo or note lying around, that's for sure. Looking at my time going through this segment, I would say that a good chunk of this 5-hour block was spent in Brookhaven. From Jackson, it only took me an hour and a half, I believe, to get to Brookhaven, and I believe it took me 3 to 3.5 hours to get through Brookhaven. Also, similarly to Woodside and Blue Creek, you have a Fog World version and you have another world version, or you have the Other World version, both complete with their own weird puzzles you have to complete, and both will have you exploring the full extent of all 3 floors. A thing I started to pick up on here is that whatever rooms you can't get into in the Fog version of Silent Hill 2, you will be able to go through in the Other World versions. Upon entering Brookhaven and going through the receptionist's area, you'll find an empty shotgun box, and Maria will remark, "What's a shotgun doing in a hospital?" And she's very right. What is a shotgun doing in a hospital? And why is it not in the shotgun box? Why is there a shotgun box in general? Questions. The goal in Brookhaven is to find Laura, who just seems to always be a few steps ahead of you and hides on the 3rd floor. As you come to each new section with her, she leaves an interesting set of drawings on each wall. The drawings, in particular, are interesting as they depict a bunny being chased by a wolf. The second drawing she does depicts 2 bunnies being stalked by a hungry wolf. I wonder if James is the wolf. Also, after the basement portion of the hospital, Maria gets tired and literally passes out on a patient bed on the 2nd floor. Not quite an appropriate time to catch some Z's, but hey, I'm not judging. Brookhaven also introduces a new enemy that sucks even harder than the mannequins, the bubblehead nurses. These nurses also carry long metal pipes like the one you carry, and you'll get mollywopped if you aren't careful. The bubblehead nurses have a long 3 to 4 hit combo that they will unleash on you, and they can also block your melee attacks and hit you with a counter. Bubblehead nurses come in 2 types, white nurses with pipes, and red nurses with knives that are way faster and initially harder to kill. Normally I would say go for the legs, but it's easier to kill the nurses with headshots than it is to make them take a knee for a melee kill. The main puzzle piece for this half of Brookhaven is a hand clenching a key and 3 patient files on the desk against the wall to the right of the hand. On the hand are 3 places for 3 different patient bracelets that you have to find, and the patient files are the clues to where to find them. Well, really, there's like 2 puzzles here. There's the hand with the key, and then there's a safe in a closet to the left of the hand with a missing symbol on it. I'm going to be honest too, the bracelet puzzle had me, and I ended up guessing the order and somehow got it right. Completing this puzzle will then help you complete the safe puzzle. Completing them both will get you a key to the roof and a memo. The memo warns that this key will get you to where you need to go, but pain will also be involved. In true dumb things white guys do fashion, James takes the key, reads the memo, and is like, "All right, let's go to the roof." On the roof, in a shed, you will find a very interesting diary page. The entry itself is about a person, possibly a woman, who is getting very bad news about her diagnosis and the days leading up to getting this news. Do you know who this diary page belongs to? I have a pretty good idea who this person is, but I'm not telling. I think we'll find out later on in the game. But anyways, when you leave the shed, you come face to face with Pyramid Head again, and he literally throws you down through the floorboards right to where you need to be on the 3rd floor. In your exploration of the hospital, when you reach the 3rd floor, you'll find a giant iron door with a peephole that is keeping you from getting to Laura. In a weird way, Pyramid Head kind of helps you get to Laura by throwing you through an entire floor. So yeah, Pyramid Head for the win. Upon approaching Laura, you will have an interesting dialogue exchange. The only real big change here is that the scene happens on the 3rd floor in the remake instead of the 1st floor in the original. The dialogue is also changed around a bit too. When James asks how Laura knows Mary, Laura says, "Are you going to yell at me if I don't?" James swears he won't, and then totally yells at her when she tells him she met her a year ago at the hospital. Remember earlier when Laura was saying that people often yell at her when she does bad things? Well, here it is. At this point, Laura cries, "Fine, don't believe me, see if I care," and runs away. James chases after her and grabs her arm. The dialogue after this isn't new, but Laura running away is. She didn't run away in the original. She kind of he apologizes and then she tricks him. But in this one, she runs away and James, exasperated, chases after her. Also, James's vocal tone changes. He no longer sounds empathetic and sorry. He sounds exasperated and controlling as he tells her this isn't a place for kids and that she could get hurt. It's also interesting to note here that Laura says, "By what?" indicating that she can't see the monsters that James can see. It could very well be that she sees just a normal Silent Hill and can't see anything that the others can see. Previously, in the theater, Eddie says he blocked the door to keep the monsters out, and Laura called him weird. Again, because she can't see any of the hellscape that the others can see, as she gives in to his demands that are cloaked in attempts to be kind and compassionate. She tells him that she needs to get a letter given to her by Mary and that she hid it. When he asks where, she literally points to the most ominous-looking door on the 3rd floor. This in no way indicates that something bad is about to happen. Of course, when you go in, she slams the door shut behind you and taunts you as you hear something crawling around in the ceiling tiles. Thus enters Flesh Lips. So, Flesh Lips. Upon exploring Brookhaven, you will come across a lot of doctor memos talking about a particular patient experiencing delusions. Now, technically, there are 3 patients, but the game really focuses on one in particular. You'll find memos talking about how this particular patient can get out of his room and they can't figure out how. It's all heavily implied that this particular patient or patients definitely did not choose this path themselves. But I digress. The Flesh Lips boss fight is essentially with one of these patients, only the patient is a mass of flesh in a metal rectangular cage with a giant pair of lips sewn into the bottom. This boss fight is not actually hard, but it is a little more challenging than Pyramid Head. The key to this boss fight is to use the shotgun to remove the metal mesh so you can attack its fleshy parts. Really, just use the shotgun. I wouldn't focus on the gun because the gun will take literally forever to get the metal casing off. I would also save all of your shotgun rounds for this. Like when you're playing throughout Brookhaven, don't use the shotgun unless you have to. Just focus on using the handgun. You have plenty of handgun bullets. Save your shotgun for Flesh Lips. So yeah, you really just want to use the shotgun for this part. Don't focus on hitting him as much as you just want to get the metal mesh caging off. As you destroy each side, the cage bars will fall off, forming spider leg-like blades that Flesh Lips will swing at you. On destroying all sides of the cage, it will crawl up into the ceiling, destroy a wall, and then the second half of the boss fight starts. Instead of hanging from the ceiling, it's now on the ground swinging at you. If I were you, I would not use the shotgun on this part because it still has a lot of health and you don't have nearly enough shells for this. Much like Pyramid Head, you want to run around him, dodge its blade attacks, and just start filling it with bullets. Also, if you have enough healing items, I would totally risk going past the broken wall and quickly collecting the items dropped there. You will get more handgun bullets and more shotgun shells, and I think a syringe. And believe me, those items will be helpful. I think when I defeated him, I filled him up with a bunch of handgun bullets and then finished him off with a few shotgun rounds. So, not a terribly difficult fight. Once you defeat Flesh Lips, an implied other Flesh Lips' legs will hang out of the ceiling and pull you up. From this part, a cutscene happens and James is coming in and out of consciousness while being dragged through what seems to be a long corridor. As he is being dragged, the lights are a rusty-looking red and a familiar siren can be heard. As James comes in and out of consciousness, the ceiling, too, starts to change IRL into a more dilapidated and rusty ceiling. James is being dragged into the other world. When he wakes up, he is on the first floor of Brookhaven, fully into the other world. So again, much like with Woodside and Blue Creek, you now have to do the same thing that you did in Brookhaven, but now in the other world version instead. You leave the room you wake up in and enter the elevator. Only the elevator has only 2 buttons for the first and second floor. The basement floor has been pulled off. When you get to the second floor, you have a weird box with 3 chains and 3 different locks that you have to unlock, and of course 3 different paths you have to take to solve them. I want to talk about these puzzle pieces in particular because I find them pretty interesting. The first is the puzzle involving the key. So you follow a chain that leads you to a mannequin that is chained to a wheelchair. Next to the mannequin is a reflex hammer that is called the Instrument of Force when you pick it up. If you explore further, another chain will lead you to another item called the Key of Bliss, which is essentially an orbitoclast, which is the ice pick-like tool used in lobotomies. As it turns out, the reflex hammer isn't a reflex hammer like I thought it was originally. It's the hammer that often accompanies the orbitoclast. Dear listeners, do you know how a lobotomy is performed? Essentially, the doctor will place the ice pick-like instrument behind the eye socket and use the hammer to force it through the piece of bone that is protecting the brain parts so that you can use it to separate the frontal lobes from the thalamus. Can you guess what these items are going to be used for? If you guessed giving the mannequin a lobotomy, you would be very correct. The key literally lies behind the eye socket. As an added effect for uncomfortability, you have to move the arms up over the face in an attempt to keep the instrument away, and then you have to break the arm covering the eye so you can force the instrument in. Yikes. So the second isn't an item, but a clue to the 4-number lock to the right of the box. This one had me running all over the clue area for like 30 minutes trying to figure out what I was missing before I realized that James doesn't get a moment where he realizes the combo and writes it on the map like all the other clues. No. The one clue you get is the paper memo, and you have to figure it out from all the context clues. The memo itself outlines a cruel form of torture created from a Pavlovian experience involving pills administered at a very specific time that brings very bad effects about. The third clue involves turning on power to a bed on the 3rd floor with what looks like electroshock therapy equipment hooked up to it. However, the bed is pulled upright, and the instrument that administers the shock to the head looks eerily like the headpiece used on an electric chair for executions. Turning the power on and hitting the button definitely confirms this, as an ungodly amount of electricity shoots out of the metal head basket and runs down the patient bed, outlining the button sequence for the electric number lock. If you read all the notes from the patients that were left before arriving to the other world and the ones left in the other world, you begin to understand that each of these clues seem to imply a horrible method of cruelty inflicted on the patients by the doctors in what seems to be an attempt to create a pathway to the other world. Upon removing each lock, the box will open up but have nothing in it. You really feel the look of disappointment that James has on his face as he realized he just went through all of that for nothing. However, a drape will fall down, revealing a woman in the wall with a hand missing 2 rings. In her mouth is the missing basement button. Huzzah! As you enter the basement to look for the 2 rings, a familiar face will appear. Maria. When Maria appears, James accidentally calls her Mary and then apologizes and says he's still glad that she is alive anyways. At this, the flirty facade drops, and she straight loses it. The voice actress for Maria is amazing, as you can really hear the frustration and anger in her voice with little sprinkles of fear as she yells at him saying, "Anyways? What do you mean anyways? I was almost killed back there. I've never been so scared in my whole life." And then she drops a bomb. "All you care about is that dead wife of yours." Yikes. You couldn't care less about me, could you? Wow. The expression on his face when she says this is like he just got smacked in the face with a spiked metal gauntlet. Taken back, he tries to apologize, and she rushes towards him and holds him tightly, saying, "Then don't leave me alone again. Stay with me. You were supposed to take care of me." It's this last phrase, "you were supposed to take care of me," that hits James the hardest. When Maria asks about Laura, she also gets really worried, saying they need to go look for her. James is surprised by how worried she is about Laura and asks if she knew her before this place, but Maria couldn't remember. Now, before we get back to the statue, I want to mention that there is a room next to the save point in the basement with a puzzle box labeled Q1, Q2, and Q3 with 3 buttons across each question. When you take the elevator down, originally, the first time, there's a weird voice that sounds and gives you 3 questions with 3 answers each to select from. This puzzle box is where you answer each question. Answering it correctly will give you a bunch of assorted ammo and health items. Answering it incorrectly will make the box lock forever and you will not be able to access the contents again. Good thing it's right next to a save point, right? Okay, so we get the rings and we take it back to the door lady and put the rings on, and the door opens to reveal a passageway leading down that isn't on the map and doesn't make any real sense at all. Now, Maria gets a little scared and says they really shouldn't go through the door and that she has a bad feeling about it, but James urges them to push forward anyways. Entering through the door is a narrow concrete stairway with concrete walls going down and a memo lying in the corner part. If you pick up the memo and read it, it just says, "It is done." And on the other side, if you flip it over, it says, "Sick no more." Very ominous. As you get to the end of the stairway going down, you arrive at a rusty door. Going a little ways through it, the door will lock and Pyramid Head will show up, only this time he's sporting a giant metal pike. This chase sequence isn't too bad, honestly. It's designed to make you feel tense and give you a sense of urgency, but as long as you keep on running, you'll stay ahead of him. Really, the chase sequence in Resident Evil 7 was way worse than this. At least you can get away from Pyramid Head if you just keep moving. I can't tell you how many times Jack caught up to me while trying to get the key to the floor compartment in the first segment of Resident Evil 7. Getting to the end of the sequence will reveal an elevator. As you run for it, Maria will trip and fall. It's interesting to note that he never looks back to see if Maria is okay when she falls. He just keeps booking it to the elevator and only looks at and addresses her when he is safely in the elevator. Maybe Maria was right in questioning whether he even cared about her. When she gets to the elevator door, it's already closing, and as they both try to pry the door open, Maria gasps and blood spurts out onto her and James. Pyramid has impaled her. In but a brief moment, Pyramid Head pulls her away and the door closes. The elevator starts to go up as James sinks to the floor, the weight of his actions seemingly pulling him to his knees. The door opens with James still on his knees and a very sad contemplative song plays as James slowly pulls himself back to his feet. As you move out of the elevator, you are back in the front reception area of the hospital, or at least the otherworld version of it. Going into the reception area, you will have a doctor's memo and a key to the front door. The memo will talk about the doctor's discovery of the phenomenon known as the otherworld and what steps are needed to make someone experience this phenomenon. That's a fucking yikes, bro. As you leave the hospital, you see Laura running down the road, and as you look out to your surroundings, you realize that you have not entered back into the foggy, surreal world of Silent Hill. No. No, you're still in the other world. And this is where I'm going to wrap this episode up. Once again, I am sorry that this episode took so long to get out, but having to replace my PS5 definitely took a chunk of time away. With that, though, we have only 2 more episodes left. The next one will conclude our journey through Silent Hill, and the last episode will be my thoughts over it. Thank you for listening, and tune in a week or two, probably 2 weeks, for the next episode. Bye-bye now.